Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this program, where we'll be commemorating the 16 days activism against towards ending violence against women and girls. It's very nice to see very cheerful faces, even though it's the end of the day. Very busy healthcare professionals and possibly the members of the public. And I would want to say a very, wonderful thank you for joining us and making our time to do this even at short notice. In fact, you don't know how I feel. Well, anyway, I'll tell you later. So this program is brought to you in collaboration with National Association of Sea Dogs, Magna Carta Deck, Walk 347 platform, and Kettering General Hospital, especially the safeguarding team and the pediatric team. And here with us, we've got very notable people who have had good experience, wealth of experience in the topic which we are all focused on here. Without much ado, I would be progressing by introducing the medical director of Kettering General Hospital, who would open up the program, and because of want on time, we would just proceed to introducing every speaker before they make their presentation. Please, obviously you don't know how happy I am, but thank you. I would like to welcome Dr. Rabia Imtiaz, but she always prefers me calling her Rabia.
Yes, thank you very much, Obi. It is Rabia, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with all of you this evening to talk about the topic which is actually very close to my heart itself. And when Obi asked me if I will speak about it, I didn't have to think twice. All I had to think was how I'm going to move other things in my diary to make space for it. So I'm really delighted I can be here, and I'll try to stay most of the evening. I might have to scoot off towards the end. I mean, sadly, throughout my career in obstetrician and gynecologist across the globe, and when I say globe, I mean globe, it is Pakistan, Middle East, United States, and here in America, I've seen the devastating consequences of direct and indirect impact of violence against women and girls in all forms. And I've seen the crushing consequences, not only on the psyche, the physical and mental health, the careers, and it can be soul destroying for people who have lots of potential, for women and girls who've got lots of potential. And it is really encouraging actually to see that lots of work is being done around the world, and webinars like this are really amazing. However, it is really disturbing and heartbreaking that even today, drastic practices like FGM and domestic abuse can go unnoticed, and people try and normalize and justify them. And then those justifications get heard, and they don't get stopped at the start of the discussion. So still a long way to go. To ensure that these women and girls get the love, the respect, and the dignity they deserve in life, I believe our curiosity, our courage, and our compassion as professionals and human is what is needed, and we owe it to them. And that's why I would like to say a massive thank you to the organizers of this webinar, to the speakers, and actually to all you audience, to listening, that we can actually work together and make the difference. And with that, I'm going to let Obi invite the other speakers and open the evening. So thank you very much, Obi. I think, Obi, you're on mute.
Well, thank you very much. Right, yeah, I'll try my best not to talk to MTS. Thank you very much for that wonderful opening remark. I think what we need to go ahead then is to just bring in our next speaker. Our next speaker's name is Joanne Fisher. Joanne is a registered nurse and midwife and currently works as the named midwife for safeguarding at Kettering General Hospital. Previously, she's held roles in a women's HMP, as well as with a family nurse partnership, as well as also the sexual assault referral center. She has a wealth of experience in terms of abuse in amongst women and girls, and also, as you know, in her role as a midwife, that provides an anchor point for most of us, where we would be able to learn from her experience about things. And she'll be talking to us very, very interestingly about a new topic, which kind of also is has been introduced or also finds its way in the new Domestic Abuse Act 2022, launched in July. And as you know, Northamptonshire had become the first county or police force to invariably prosecute some children and men or abusers using that new Domestic Abuse Act, which was launched just in July. So I would be welcoming Jo to the spotlight.
Oh, thank you, Obi. What a delightful introduction. Okay, so yeah, I'm Jo, named midwife for safeguarding at Kettering. Unfortunately, I'm not very good with technology, so Obi is going to be my #1 man. So if I can ask you to put up my slides, Obi.
Okay, I'll do that right away.
Thank you so much. You can flick past the first one.
Okay.
That's just me getting clever with PowerPoint, you see. Oh. On to the next slide, Obi.
Cool.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, so this really, really is a whistle-stop tour of what reproductive coercion is. And actually, when we think about reproductive coercion, I'm sure some of you have heard of it, but also I think probably that some of you might not have heard of it. And that's because this type of abuse is actually really rarely spoken about. And reproductive coercion or control is control or coercion over decisions about becoming pregnant or continuing with a pregnancy, about wearing contraception, anything like that. And typically it affects women, although obviously it can affect men as well. But women can be subjected to this reproductive coercion by many, many different pressures. So it could be external pressure. So it could be family members, it could be partners. And it's often done by emotional blackmail. It's often done by persuasion, threats of abuse or actual abuse, threats of using somebody's children against them. And it's actually a type of sexual and domestic abuse, and it's actually really quite hard to recognize, and it's even harder to speak about. And I would say very typically it's harder to speak about in the healthcare setting, because we're so mindful about, you know, what do we do, where do we go, is this what somebody wants or doesn't want? If you go to the next slide for me, please, Obi. So said it typically affects women. Oh, you're jumping ahead, Obi. He knows the answers already. Typically affects women, can affect men as well. And it's really, really difficult. When I was looking for the kind of statistics on how many people this affects, it's actually quite difficult. There was a lovely article in the BMJ a few years ago that said it was about 25% of women at some point in their lives have felt pressured or coerced over their reproductive functions. That could be coercion over contraception, that could be coerced to have a termination, that could be coerced into carrying a pregnancy to term. And I don't know if we've got any American callers on at the moment, but you know, when I was writing this, I was like, my goodness, reproductive coercion. You know, what's going on in some states over there. Not that I should probably be getting political in 15 minutes. So actually, perhaps we'll remove that remark. When I looked also at the BBC, they did something. It was from a poll that they'd done, and actually they said that up to 50% of the respondents that they asked had experienced this. So this is absolutely massive, and it's not really talked about. Okay, Obi, on to the next slide, please. So I actually don't know how to use the chat function, Obi, at all, as we've figured out earlier on when I was trying to get onto this. So I don't know if anyone can put in the chat who they think might be involved in reproductive coercion. And Obi, you're going to have to read them out. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Thank you.
We might have some people who, like us, are not also millennials. So, oh, someone said a partner.
Partner. Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, the society.
In-laws. Oh, the
society.
in-laws. Yeah. In-laws. Yeah. Anyone else? Society. Who said society? Parents. Absolutely.
Patrick says society also.
Friends and family, that's a big one, isn't it? You know, what we want most as individuals is to feel a sense of belonging. And actually, if we do something that's against friends or family or those close to us, we can feel a real sense of shame. Yeah. Yeah, women in a reproductive age group. Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks for that, guys.
Some Dr. Femi says facilitators and enablers, family, friends, religious leaders.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. You guys are on fire. Okay, next slide.
Rabia says tradition and culture also facilitate that.
Absolutely. So I think we've pretty much got it all. So yeah, that intimate partner, the family of the partner or the family of the person that's being coerced, friends and peers as well. I've put in there professional agencies as well. And I'm thinking specifically around clients that maybe have learning needs or mental health problems. And it's maybe sometimes the discussions that we have as professionals that encouraging clients to absolutely think about contraception, which could be interpreted as some clients as being coerced because we're in that position of power. So it's actually how we think about it and what we do. And that's quite an uncomfortable one to think about, isn't it? Particularly as we're, you know, very pro patient choice and where that goes. So that could also be children's social care. If somebody's open perhaps to children's social care to a local authority and they've had other children removed, it could be a case of those discussions where you need to think about contraception. And actually, that's a form of control. It's got legal guardians. We've also got the prison system as well. You know, those conversations are had in prisons about, so what contraception are you on? What are you going to do? And, you know, and actually, again, those people in that position of power. And somebody said society, and that's absolutely right, isn't it? Where is it that you're living? Who are the people that are around you? What are the organisations, the churches you go to? What are their beliefs and how are they going to impact on you, either directly or indirectly? Okay, thanks, Obi. Next slide, please. And when I was thinking about reproductive coercion, I thought, gosh, who is it? And then came Brittany. And this year, she accused her father and her conservator at the time of not allowing her to remove her contraceptive IUD. Now, her father hasn't responded directly, as far as I know, to that statement, only that he's sorry that her daughter is suffering. Now, I don't know what's going on with Brittany. I don't pretend to know her medical history. I do know that she's got mental health problems. And I do know that actually having mental health problems doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to have children or to have the reproductive choice that you have. And that was her statement to the judge, that her team wouldn't allow her to take out the IUD because they didn't want her to have any more children. So that's other people. And interestingly, she was well enough and controlled enough to be able to perform and to be able to earn money. So it's really controlling her reproductive function. And, you know, some questions about why that was. Okay, thanks, Obi. Next slide, please. So when we think about the law, now Obi said we've got the new domestic abuse law that's July 2020, and that's really very clear now. Victims of domestic abuse can also be the subject of reproductive coercion. that can involve restricting access to birth control, refusing to use a birth control method, or refusing for your partner to use a birth control method. Deception regarding use of birth control, including falsely claiming to be using contraception, forcing a partner to get abortion, IVF or other related procedures, or denying access to such procedures. And it can take less overt forms as well. It could be that someone's not actively forcing somebody to become pregnant or to have a termination, but actually that person is under no illusions that this is what their partner wants. And if they don't do what their partner wants, actually the repercussions are going to be much greater in the long run. And we know that women from ethnic minority groups may be more likely to experience reproductive coercion. However, there's very, very limited research around this at the moment. Okay, next slide, please, Obi. We know that unintended pregnancy occurs more in people that are suffering from intimate personal violence. We know that. And that actually doubles for people that are experiencing this violence and reproductive coercion. And they're the people that often don't have a voice and don't feel able to. And it's the feelings that we get as well, you know, as professionals, as colleagues, as friends, you know, what's going on here? What's the feeling that I'm getting? Is everything okay? You know, why is this person saying this? Where's that coming from? And to really, you know, ask those questions, you know, what's going on? Okay, Obi, next slide, please. Contraceptive sabotage. Now, I don't know if anyone ever saw, it was, I think it was on BBC, and it was called I May Destroy You. It was brilliant little series, absolutely brilliant. And there was an amazing scene in there where the lead character experienced stealthing. And stealthing is the covert removal of a condom during sex. And it sounds doesn't sound too bad, does it? Stealthing, just going to remove a condom. Actually, in law, it's rape. There are no actual recorded cases of stealthing because it's not recorded as stealthing, it's recorded in law as rape. And that's because if someone has agreed to have sex with a condom on and that condom is then removed, that's then invalidated that consent to sex. So it's important actually that not only the people that may have experienced this happening to them, but also people that think I might do this, or I might say I'm using a condom, or I might remove it. Actually, that's stealthing, that's not okay. That then comes under the category of rape. And also, and certainly as a midwife, and certainly when I worked in sexual assault referral centres, contraceptive failure, non-adherence, frequent requests for emergency contraception, frequent STIs, you know, these are all the trigger warnings. These are all our red flags that, you know, we think, okay, you know, what's going on here? We need to ask more questions. However uncomfortable it is, we need to ask more questions about that. Next slide, please. So, again, contraceptive sabotage, a common occurrence is for male partners to tell a woman not to use contraception. And because of that, they might be prevented from obtaining initial or repeat supplies or emergency contraception. Often people report their partners want them to have children. There might also be a preference with the gender of children. And that could be because, again, all the pressures, you know, societal pressures, family pressures, or to maintain that permanent connection with their female partner, which is very, very typical in cases of intimate partner violence. And with contraceptive sabotage, what we also know is that there's an increased association with partner infidelity and an increased risk of STIs. So if we're thinking that somebody might have be experiencing reproductive coercion, again, it's thinking, you know, what else might be going on? Are there STIs? Is there access to contraception? What are those things that we need to think about and those questions we need to ask? Next slide, please, Obi. Okay, now I've got a beautiful case at Kettering, and it was one that really, really, really upset me. And I don't really get upset about too many things, I suppose, because of the nature of my job. And it was about a case of reproductive coercion. And we put a referral into children's social care, and it wasn't opened because children's social care didn't recognise it as reproductive coercion. And I found this clip on YouTube. It's American, but my goodness, it tells exactly the same story. And of course, it's anonymous. So I'm going to ask Obi the maestro to press go. Can't hear it. Maybe we still can't hear it.
You can hear it. Okay. You can hear it.
I can't hear it.
No, we can't hear it.
Can you hear it?
Experiencing coercion.
Oh, it's just, I think it's lagging, isn't it, at the minute?
Well, we'll give that another few seconds. If that doesn't work, then I can talk to you about it, and perhaps Obi can make the clip available for you all in the chat at the end of the presentation tonight.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll put the stuff in the chat for everyone to visit.
That's perfect. Thank you, Obi. So in the video, there was a doctor that was being spoken to, I think by members of Congress. I could be wrong. And they were asking her about, did she have any experience of somebody coming for a termination of pregnancy that she thought might have been coerced? And her response was yes. And I don't know how many doctors we've got here, how many health professionals we've got here, but I'm wondering if you're happy to share in the chat box. And I'm not going to ask for any details, just yes or no, whether or not you think that you may have seen somebody that could have been coerced into having a termination at some point. You're all very shy. Okay, I have a few months ago, and actually there's always that question in my mind, is it what this person actually wants? Is it uncertainty because of pressure that they're facing, or uncertainty because it's a big decision to make? And in the clip, the doctor talks about, you wouldn't give somebody breast augmentation if they said, my partner wants me to have breast augmentation. You wouldn't give somebody a hysterectomy if someone says, my husband wants me to have a hysterectomy. You wouldn't. So why do some people do that when they think there might be coercion from a partner with something like termination? And that's just a question I'm going to leave floating in the ether, because I know it can be very, very emotive. So I'm not actually going to ask you guys to comment on that, but it's something to really, really think about, whether you see that in practice, whether you don't, but to really, really think about, why is that kind of more okay or less challenged? Okay, Obi, on to the next slide, please. So what can we do? What can we do? And it doesn't have to be healthcare professionals. It can be anyone. It can be friends, family, other health professionals, other agencies. You know, if someone is not pregnant, does your partner support your decision about when or if you want to become pregnant? It doesn't get more direct and to the point than that. Has your partner ever tried to get you pregnant when you didn't want to be? Has your partner ever refused your request to wear a condom? And if somebody is pregnant, do you and your partner agree on what you should do about your pregnancy? And that's huge. And speaking as a midwife, it's not a question that we ask in midwifery. It's not. We'll ask who the next of kin is, who the father of the unborn is that the same person? We don't ask that question. And if we did, I wonder what we would open. I wonder if we'll be opening Pandora's box with that one. I suspect we might be. Okay, Obi, next slide. So again, you know, if you suspect that somebody might be affected by reproductive coercion or control, think domestic abuse. You know, we've got so many good policies and guidelines and resources, particularly in Northamptonshire, all round. Access some of those. Is this person actually safe to go home? If I'm that worried about coercion, is this person going to be safe if they walk out of where they are at the moment? And ensure that you create an opportunity to speak to this person alone. So many things we can do without just need another urine sample, or just need you to do this, send a partner off to do something. So many things we can do. We can be really, really inventive. And I suppose for me, the most important thing is never, ever, ever act on something without ascertaining actually that this woman is not being coerced to make that decision, because some things you can't go back on. And think outside the box as well. If someone wants contraception, but they're worried about getting hold of it, how can we provide this in a way that keeps that person safe? Yeah. Also, label it what it is, reproductive coercion. And then also think, what do we need to do onwards? Do we need to do a referral to children's social care? Do we need to offer referrals to domestic abuse services? Do we need a referral to adult social care? Does this person have capacity? Do they have care needs? Or are they being really exploited? So it's these things that we need to think about. And very typically, they're more vulnerable groups that can be more are more likely to be coerced. Okay, next slide, please, Obi. They're my references, and the podcast on the end, I mean, that's about 45 minutes, is absolutely amazing. So Obi, I don't know if you wanted to put that in the chat as well, for people if you've been interested on that. And I said I was only going to take 15 minutes and I went well over. I'm very, very sorry, guys. Does anyone have any questions for me? No? Okay, guys, enjoy your evening. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak.
Thank you very much. And Joa, thank you so much for that insightful presentation. I was just about to say that it's quite important that you had highlighted the triggers or things that might make people think about reproductive coercion, as well as highlighting the fact that even as healthcare professionals, like I've previously said, most times we have a lady in the consulting room with us and with a partner, and we think that this person is being coerced. And we just invariably, you know, just because of pressures, we go ahead and say, couldn't ask these questions because partner was there. And you find that throughout the lady's pregnancy until the delivery, that question is never revisited. So it's important that also as healthcare professionals, we think about that and we do not let go. There is a question by Femi Adebajo says, the thin line between capacity and coercion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have to determine, does this person have capacity to be able to make the decision that they're making? And if not, you know, you've then got considerations about best interests, court of protection, all those things. But it's don't take any steps without ascertaining that this person's got capacity and that they're not being coerced. Absolutely.
Okay, we've got Adeni Redola's hand up. Dr. Redola, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Obina. Dr. Femi's comment raised pertinent issues because a lot of time what we have is an individual is deemed to have capacity, and as such, and they're not a vulnerable adult, then safeguarding doesn't necessarily kick in. But that doesn't remove the fact that there could be coercion going on, and they might be struggling to deal with that. Those are salient issues that need to be talked about and visited, because outside safeguarding, what avenues of support do these women have if they are being coerced into terminating a pregnancy? They don't necessarily have a incapacitation of their mental faculty that will deem them not having capacity to make that decision. But they have a partner who is sitting right there and making it difficult for them to say exactly what they want to say.
Yeah, very good question. And for me, it's at that moment that it becomes safeguarding. If somebody's being coerced, it's a criminal offence and it's safeguarding. So, you know, however you choose to do it. I mean, for me, it would be like, you know, I have to speak to this person by myself, or I'll take them out to do a urine sample, or I'd send the partner off, and I'd be having those questions. Is this what you want? You know, you don't look very happy here. Is everything okay at home? Is this your decision that you're making? Do you need more time? Because, you know, we can come up with all kinds of stuff. Oh, you know, we can't do it today or tomorrow, or actually we need to meet you overnight because your blood pressure's a little bit up. There's so many things that we can do. We can be really inventive if we need to be able to move somebody away, so that we're not acting until we are sure that this is this person's active choice and they're not being coerced to do it. But if somebody's being coerced, at that point it's safeguarding.
Thank you very much, Joe. That's
very welcome.
really nice. I think you hit it on the point. Femi has his hand up. Femi.
Yeah, hello. Thank you, Joe, for your presentation. Can you hear me?
No, shout. I'm a bit deaf. Getting old. Deaf and blind. Shout at me.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, so I was just going to say that just a note of caution on. Again, I used an expression earlier, which is benign paternalism, and that is even the elaborate processes of safeguarding should not blind us to the fact that sometimes the greatest impediment towards empowering people who are being coerced or abused even are they themselves.
Yeah.
I'm a general adult psychiatrist, and I've had many, many occasions where I've said to someone, I think you need to get out of this relationship because abuse is present multiple times. And you find a guy comes into the clinic and you eventually tell him to leave because he's such an obstructive and nasty influence. And when the complaint comes in, guess who signs it? The woman you're trying to protect. So what I'm saying in essence is that sometimes professionals are impaired in their ability to effectively safeguard.
Of course.
Because those people who need to be safeguarded are not taken for some reason, you know, social vulnerability, education, economic disability. They are not willing to be willing collaborators in their own emancipation. And we need to bear that in mind.
Absolutely, and they might not be able to take that step at that time.
No, not be willing.
Well, I think, you know, when somebody's being coerced or is being abused, it often takes a lot of time for them to recognise that. And then there's lots of reasons as to why that person doesn't leave at that time. It's creating that space and that opportunity, and also understanding that if someone does have capacity, they can make that unwise decision. But it's, you know, ensuring that they're aware of the resources, of the support that's there. You know, if you look at the statistics, how many times somebody has to be abused before they seek help, it's huge. And why is that? It's because often people love the people that are abusing them. And, you know, if it was a child doing it to you, your partner doing it to you, and a lot of time it's that recognition of abuse as well. You know, if we're saying stuff like you need to leave this person, again, that's us coercing too. So it's a dance, isn't it? And it's very, very difficult. But yes, sometimes you can leave a consultation and you can feel absolutely bereft that, you know, maybe this person's going to end up dead. And those are the feelings that you can be left with, and there's nothing that you can do. But you just have to be able to open that door to say, you know, this is where I am, this is what's available. And that's the best you can do.
That's wonderful. I think what I got from there is that there has to be that balance. But I think at the heart of it is, if you've got that concern enough to think that this person should leave that relationship, then clearly you should raise that concern and not leave that person who is unwilling to do that because of obviously the coercion there.
I don't think you can coerce somebody to leave a relationship, but I think you can say there are services. But anyway, I need to go to dinner.
I know. I've got Lizzie up. I got Lizzie.
Yeah.
Lizzie
so
wants
lovely to talk to you guys. Lizzie, you want to ask a question to me,
it's
Lizzie?
fine. No, it's fine. I was just going to comment on something that was said, so don't worry, Joe.
Okay.
Right, I'm going. I need feeding. Right.
Okay, that's fine. Take care. Thank you very much, Joe.
No worries. I don't know how to leave this now.
Don't worry. I'll
Just
help you.
close the computer. You'll be fine. I was just going to add on that obviously following the fact that we were saying about leaving relationships when we see that there's coercion, we need to make sure that we have got safety netting in place and being mindful that the right sort of support, such as, you know, domestic violence support workers that work very closely with these women and men in some cases, are there to support these women. And we also need to be mindful that if there is coercion, do they have capacity? Because we are aware that coercion actually affects decision making, and therefore they don't always have capacity. So we have to really question whether it's actually their capacity and their decision making is what they want to make, if we're considering that coercion is responsible. So we just need to realize that actually if we have truth and we can tell and we know for a fact that coercion is in place, then we can deem them not to have capacity in making them decisions. But then we also, on the flip side of that, are aware that people unfortunately every day make unwise decisions, which professionals especially really struggle with, especially when they can see what's going to happen. But we just have to respect the fear that they have in leaving these relationships. I think is really important, and it's massive, and we see that, don't we?
Thank you very much. So anyway, obviously from what you can see, Lisa's already thrown herself in. She's our next speaker. Elizabeth Hall is a named nurse for safeguarding children at Kettering General Hospital. Liz, you've got the floor. I'm just going to throw in your presentation.
Thank you very much. So just while the presentation's coming up, my background is paediatric ED, so A&E, and from that I did many years of night shifts, and this is when a lot of the sort of sexual exploitation and the kind of things of the missing children that were coming into us, and it made me look into this a lot more, and this is where my safeguarding background came in, my interest came in, and this is why I've chose today to do CSE, because I don't think we realise when we think about gangs and county lines how much that impacts CSE especially, and what else is out there. So I'm happy for you to click through. And the next one is just literally obviously to say that some of the stuff we discuss in topics can be a struggle, and we just always say look after yourself, and that people are always here to support you individually. Outside of this, that's absolutely fine. So child, there you go. Picture says a lot, doesn't it? So CSE, child sexual exploitation, is a form of child sexual abuse, and I think that is number one key. It is abuse. It occurs where an individual or a group takes advantage of an imbalance or power of coerce, manipulative, or deceive a child or young person under the age of 18 into sexual activity. This can be done in an exchange for, so it can happen by, in exchange for something the victim needs or wants, and or for the financial advantage or increased status of the perpetrator or facilitator. The victim may have been sexually exploited even if the sexual activity appears consensual. CSE does not always involve physical contact. It also occurs through the use of technology. Next slide. So just because obviously we discussed about consent, and the reason I've put this in here is just to make it a little bit for us to understand. So a person consents if he or she agrees by choice and has the freedom and the capacity to make that choice. Capacity is considered impaired in the following circumstances. So young person has a significant mental disorder or disability. Young person has consumed significant amounts of alcohol and or drugs. Sexual activity with an adult in position of authority or power. Sexual activity with an adult in position of trust or responsibility, or where there is evidence of CSE or coercion. Capacity is a decision specific. A young person may have capacity to consent to contraception, for example, but may not recognise that they are being abused or exploited. And we see this quite a lot. So girls will come for the morning after pill because they know that they've had sex, but they don't understand that having sex when they are 14 with a 19-year-old because it's their boyfriend and they love them is wrong, but they understand by taking the morning after pill that it's because they don't want a pregnancy, and they understand what that morning after pill does. And it's really important, no matter what, number one rule, no child can consent to their own abuse. And I think we all understand that, but when it comes to CSE and coming with teenagers, especially when they come into our departments and they're really, really naughty and they're really troublemaking because that's how they've learnt their behaviours to be, we need to just remember and stop and remember and say they cannot consent to their own abuse, and it is abuse. So next slide, please. Next slide. That's it. So sexual activity in the law. Sexual Offences Act 2003. So children under 13 cannot in law consent to sexual activity, and penetrative activity is statutory rape. Sexual activity with a child under 16 is illegal. We know that children under the age of 16, between 13 and 16, are having sex. They're consenting to sex with their relationship, with boyfriends, girlfriends, however. It's really important that we see, are they both at that same sort of age, or is this a criminal offence? I'm not saying it is right, and absolutely we still need to be safeguarding, putting that health promotion in and supporting this family where they do know, and if not, we're supporting that child. But we are aware that if somebody was 17 and 15, we would really need to be thinking sort of legal side of it, because somebody is over 16 and somebody is under 16, which I think some people still really struggle with. But we know that when they're ages of 13, 14 and 15, and it's mutually agreed, the likelihood is there's not going to be a criminal sort of investigation or follow any further instances. Also, so if we carry on, so offences may include indecent images of children, sexual assault or rape, sexual communication with a child, meeting a child, following sexual grooming or revenge porn. And that revenge porn is something that we are seeing more and more, especially in modern technology ways. And obviously all concerns must be reported to the police, either 101 if it's a historic one, or 999 if the offence is just happening or still ongoing. Next slide. So county lines, and I'm sure everybody is aware of what county lines are, but I just wanted to cover the topic because it has such a massive input into CSE these days. So county lines typically involves a gang from a large urban area travelling to locations such as county and coastal towns to sell Class A drugs. Users ask for jobs via mobile phones, and so they'll have like a burner phone. Most people might be recognised, and that's one of the signs that you'd be looking for, a child with two phones. So one's their burner drug dealing phone and one is their phone that they use for their mum and dad. Couriers travel between gangs and local areas, to deliver cash and drugs, basically. It's as simple as that. County lines typically involves gangs grooming and using young people to act as carriers and deliver drugs to customers out of their areas. This often involves deception, intimidation, violence, debt bondage, and or grooming. So debt bondage is, just to clarify, it's if somebody has been arrested and the drugs have been taken off them. So they say 13-year-olds had their drugs taken off them that have been used to sort of travel around with, or they've been deliberately mugged for them drugs, probably by the same gang. They are then in debt bondage to that gang, so they work for free. And it's a good scare tactic to make them work for free and stay within their gang. Next slide. So if we're just put it into narrative, here is a lovely little red area of Northamptonshire where I currently am at the moment, which is wonderful in England because we are literally centre of every big city and the train lines go through everywhere. So unfortunately, Northamptonshire is extremely high for county lines. Next slide. And just to summarise, so in 2018, Kettering had 8 different county line gang members, 4 in Northampton, East Northants. Northampton had 15, and etc. This is a lot higher, but this is the last statistic records that I have. But 4 years on, I know that a lot of these have doubled, but it's just to give you a narrative of how many different gangs we've got going through our area. Next slide. So you're probably wondering why I've spoke about county lines and gangs. Well, it's because it has a massive impact on CSE. The reason for this is because it is to exert power and control over members, initiate young people into the gangs, they exchange sexual activity for status or protection, they entrap rival gang members by exploiting girls and young women, they inflict sexual assault as a weapon in conflict. For instance, with this year, we've had at least 2 women that have, or young girls that have been raped from another gang. And it's just almost literally just to take the mick of the other gang without even realising the impact they're having on these young girls. So they also do it just as punishing the girls if they run off as well. And obviously on top of that, it's trafficking. And that's the movement of children for the purpose of exploitation, whether or not they have been forced or deceived, includes moving from one house to another. And this happens quite a lot. It's quite regular that they'll get moved from one house to another because they have something called a pop-up brothel or a pop-up drug place. And so the best way we can do is moving them quickly, so they're not seen by the police and they're not found, basically, and they get to carry on their lovely business for a lot longer. So next slide. So this is just talking about what I just said. So gangs are exploiting girls and forcing them into prostitution in pop-up brothels. These form of brothels are used to avoid detection. The women and young girls are forced into sex work with their services being advertised on adult websites. So if you just click twice, I think you'll get 2 little screenshots of a recent sort of some arrests that have been done recently. And you should just get, so the bloke that was arrested said he referred to his women as horses. There is work horses. They weren't women, they were horses. And this young girl who was a Hungarian said she held me prisoner with beatings and death threats, and that is this year, and that's absolutely been published. That's luckily she has actually gone back to Hungary. She was actually trafficked here, unfortunately, through one of these gangs, and it's quite sobering to actually hear their opinion. So next slide. So this young lad who looks ever so young, and if you've seen a photo of him on Facebook and he said to you that he was really young, you'd really believe him. So if we just put it, sorry, because I'm quite used to doing the slides myself, it might just be easy if you just pop up all the next sort of speech captions and I'll read them through as you pop them up. So he groomed young girls online before sexually abusing them. He was caught by police in a hotel room with a 14-year-old girl in Wales. He's from Rochdale. Had been engaged in sexual activity with lots of other children. He'd been contacting teenage girls from social media from around the country, including Northamptonshire, Wales and Greater Manchester. He was claiming to the girls online that he was only 15 years old, but actually was 20 years at the time of the offences in September 2018. He pleaded guilty to 15 offences. of accounts of grooming, sexual activity between the ages of 13 and 15, 2 counts of attempted to meet children under the age of 16. The list goes on, and that's only the things that he know about. And he was jailed for 8 years and 4 months. So, you know, as much as there's a sad story, there was a success story that actually he was jailed. And again, the reason I put this up, when you look at all of these pictures, these are all offenders, and I hate sharing their pictures because they don't deserve the limelight. But I just want people to look at what we're looking at is there's no fixed nationality, culture, colour. If you look at these, they're all different ages and they're different you know, female and male. And I think it's really important that when we look at these, there is no specific kind of offender usually, but in our area, we do know that predominantly they are white males, 19 to 24 years of age. And the reason I put this on here is because there's lots and lots of previous historic big case reviews, such as the Rotherham one, about the girls that were groomed by Indian taxi drivers, and they were passed around and used in prostitution, and it was quite a significant case that actually they did I think it was BBC drama about it, and it really highlighted CSE, which is wonderful, but it also stereotyped, because people were assuming that, you know, every Indian taxi driver was CSE, when actually when we look at it, clear as day, the age of 19 to 24 white male is predominantly going to be, you know, the ones that are at the higher sort of end of the rates. And I just wanted you to see that, as you can see, they're definitely not all the same age, are they? Next slide, please. So I'm just going to read through a few of the stories that I've picked up from some of our serious case reviews. So Sadia is a 17-year-old British Pakistani young woman, made an allegation of sexual abuse against a family member. As a result, she was threatened with a forced marriage. Her family claims they want to remove her from the country to curb her wild behaviour. Following these threats, Sadi began spending time with older males described by professionals as Asian, and was moved into multiple locations by them. Sadi is now pregnant as a result of sexual exploitation she has experienced. Family members have physically assaulted Sadi as a punishment for the pregnancy. So next slide. And this is Sophie's story. Sophie's mum, Linda, has been known to local violence against women's services for a number of years. Because of the violence she was experienced from multiple partners, Sophie is a white British young woman, and she was 13 years old when Linda met Ray. Ray, who was also white British, moved in with Linda and was violent towards both her and her children. Ray began to invite his friends around the house. They, in turn, were abusive to Linda and her children. Following this, Ray offered Sophie as a sexual commodity to his friends on a regular basis and threatened Linda and Sophie with violence if Sophie did not comply. Next slide. Tegan's story. Tegan, a white British young woman, was sexually exploited from the ages of 12 years old. From the age of 13, Tegan was taken by a Turkish man to a variety of parties across England that she reports were in nice houses and some described as mansions. In these houses, Tegan would be raped by several men from a range of ethnicities who were paying to use her. Tegan described a book being available with photographs of and ages of all the girls being sexually exploited by this particular group. Men could choose which girl they wanted. Tegan reported men paying those who were exploiting her up to £500 for an hour with her. Groups of men could also request one girl to share between them overnight, where the rape of the girl would be filmed. The operation involved men working the streets to pick up vulnerable girls, forming relationships with them by grooming them, and then passing them on to the men who controlled their business. If Tegan ever refused to comply, she would be beaten and her family threatened. Following the abuse, Tegan took several overdoses, was placed in secure accommodation, and self-harmed by cutting and ligatures, sometimes on a daily basis. Tegan described the abuse that she experienced as serious and organised, and is unwilling to make a formal complaint for fear of repercussions from those involved in the operation. Next slide. And there's lots of sort of documents and practice reviews. So that's the Rochdale one that we spoke about. And there's lots of sort of practice reviews. So you can go to the next slide. If we could just get them shared afterwards, that'd be brilliant, Obi. And the reason I read them stories out, because I think you need to hear the voice of the victim. I think you need to realise that it could be anybody. I think and it's any scenario, any situation. You could live in a 1-bed flat or you could live in a 7-bed mansion. It really doesn't matter. The crime is happening everywhere. So if we look at some of the push and pull factors, so push and pull factors, so push factors are the vulnerabilities or issues that push the young person towards a perpetrator. This may include children who have been the victim of physical abuse, sexual abuse or neglect and emotional abuse, or have experienced low self-esteem or bullying. The pull factors are the grooming techniques used to gain the child's attention, admiration, affection, which often traps into insecurities or a desire of acceptance and status by the young person. These may include receiving alcohol, drugs, money or gifts, and/or being offered somewhere to stay where there is no rules and boundaries. When completing a CSE risk assessment, the lead professionals will refer to these indicators. Risk indicators may include staying out late, missing episodes, or going into unsafe places or breakdown in relationships with family or peers. Agencies should look into the details to assess the threshold. Professional curiosity should always be applied alongside recording the voice of the child. Consider contextual safeguarding. Next slide. And I'll go on. So there is a really, really good clip. It is 15 minutes long, but it's a lovely, well, not lovely, it's a horrific scenario of grooming and CSE, and it literally shows you some of the key things to look out for as professionals, what we should be looking out for. For example, not attending school, going and having the morning after pill quite a lot, having lots of money, bruising, drug use, and being picked up by the ambulance and found in unsafe places. So it's a video that it sits with you once you've watched it. Next slide. So Kaylee's love story, I don't think the signal's going to work or the speech for this. This is only a 5-minute story and it's a true story. And it's based on a young girl that was groomed online who was telling her mum and dad that she was going to stay at her friend's house. From this, she actually went to a man's house who was a lot older. And she was raped, she was coerced, she was raped. The neighbour also raped her and eventually she escaped and they actually murdered her. And it's a really sobering, heartbreaking story, but it makes us understand why we do the job we do, why we moan about CSE, why we moan about safeguarding, why we want to make it prevalent that we need to be looking out for these things. We need to get a little bit more technology savvy. We need to understand what's going on the internet, because that is where we're aware that harm is happening all the time. Next slide. So for us as health professionals, and what we need to be looking at is things that they come in for. So expression of despair, self-harm, overdose, eating disorder, challenging behaviour, neglect or medical conditions, or substance misuse. Mental health difficulties, so anxiety, depression, PTSD or psychosis. STIs, repeated requests for emergency hormone or contraception. Pregnancy, miscarriage and or seeking termination of pregnancy. The late presentation or unexplained injuries or illnesses, or the suspicion of assault. The change in physical appearance, dress or image. And when I say change in physical appearance, that could be that they're so self-loathing and they're so upset with themselves that they hide their bodies because they're disgusted in it, or they might dress quite very differently because they're trying to impress the older man, because that's how they've been told to dress. So short skirts, low cut tops. I'm not saying that every girl is like that, please don't think that, but it's more about the change, what's changed, and knowing that, understanding that, is listening to the parents as well and having that voice from the child. So sometimes vague somatic complaints, headaches, stomach, some excuses of not wanting to go places, persistent dysuria with no obvious medical cause. Parents are all of a sudden seeking ADHD or mental health diagnosis for their child due to a rapid change in their behaviour or impact upon parental mental health. And this is, if we think in family, in which we should be in all safeguarding, is if this is impacting the child, how is the parent? What's the parent like? Have they had low mood? You know, asking them questions. If it's mum or dad just coming in for an appointment, is there anything that's triggered this mum, dad? What's happened? And asking them questions and opening up that safeguarding referrals. Next slide. So the only reason I've put this in just because we're speaking about it just in the past slide. So a study in 2021 found that online grooming featured consistently among interviewees, particularly involving females who are being coerced into taking and sharing explicit images of themselves. While it is unclear whether this was linked to sexual or criminal exploitation, rising cases of self-harm in young females were attributed to this form of online activity. And that is why I say every child that comes into our hospitals must be safeguarded for mental health reasons. Now, if they've got a true mental health diagnosis and we understand what's going on, we still need to be asking what's triggered that, what's happened. You know, we still need to be, I'm not a mental health specialist. I would not be able to diagnose someone in ED saying this is true eating disorder and nothing else has triggered this. This is, you know, mother had it and it's a copied. What I'd be needing to know is what's triggered this, when did this start, and asking what the family about what else they know. Has she got a new boyfriend? Has she been going out late? Them kind of questions. That professional curiosity is absolutely paramount in these situations. Next slide. So reachable moments. We talk about reachable moments because our hospitals, our surgeries, our police stations, they are places that children see as safe places. They are places where they just want us sometimes to ask, and they come to us, they deliberately self-harm because they think it's a safe place, and then we patch them up and we just don't ask. So what we're saying is just ask, are you okay? We've noticed that you've come in and you've had an STI previous. This is your second STI. Can I ask you, is it the same sexual partner? Can I ask you, do you know what CSE is? We can ask as professionals. We're allowed to be really nosy. It's a wonderful job to be nosy in. Please do, because you might save someone's life. You might change them years and years of abuse. We should be asking. So relationships really do matter, and every contact with someone who has experienced adversity and trauma can be an opportunity for healing and growth. Adversity and trauma can be a long-lasting impact on young people's mental health and their relationships with other people in their lives. We should see young people's reactions and responses to adverse and traumatic events as an attempt to survive and make meaning in their life. Young people make adaptations in an attempt to survive in their immediate environment, find ways of mitigating or tolerating the distress they are facing by using the resources available to them, establishing a sense of safety or control, or to make sense of their experiences that they have had. To work in a diversity and trauma-informed way is to be as sensitive to the wider context of a person's life and how this impacts them and support you might be able to give them. And that is literally the next question. So once they have disclosed something, it's what's next? What support are we going to do for them? So next slide, please. So we're going to be thinking about doing safeguarding referrals. We're going to be looking at the toolkits. We're going to be trying to support them. So what I would say is please remember the language that you use matters. If you were to say that a 14-year-old is promiscuous, what actually you're wanting to say is they're not promiscuous. We've got concerns of coercion. We've got concerns of power over them. You know, we need to really ensure that the language you're using is not victim fault. So we really need to take that away from them, because that has detrimental impact on the referral itself, and the reader, how they look at it completely changes their opinion. So we can go on to the next slide. So just some answers: putting themselves at risk. I've heard this, I still hear this nearly on a daily risk, all the time. So young person may be groomed. There are concerns regarding other influences of the young person. Let's just swap it around. Sexual activity. If they're under 13, it's rape. Let's not put sexual activity. It's not a decision, it's rape. In a relationship, actually, are they in a relationship, or are we considering coercion and control as a factor? Boyfriend or girlfriend. Young person states that they're in a boyfriend, however, there are concerns. We need to really change that. We shouldn't be calling them a gang member. We should could be saying they're criminally exploited. Next slide. On the bottom of that slide, sorry, I just went on, there is a caption that you can use at the bottom. It can be shared. I didn't want to open anything up because I don't know what will happen. It's just all the types of language. It's a big project. It's a big piece of work. It's really something we're trying to get out there at the moment, just to make us mindful of how we speak, especially about young children. Please do have a look at it and see about what you may put yourself. Sometimes it'll, you know, we're all just as guilty sometimes of copying the person before and how they used to write documents. So this slide is something we use at Kettering General Hospital. It's a gang involvement screening tool. It helps support stuff like, are they missing? And we use that with our safeguarding referrals into children's. And we're just getting toolkits currently being put in for CSE, vulnerable adolescents, etc., and it will all get put in together. So anything you do, attach it to your safeguarding referral, make that referral count, make it not be a no further action. Next slide. So this is just an S-bar. It's just something we use. So a safeguarding S-bar, literally, if in doubt, put something together, use it as evidence. You might be looking at it and say, actually, I've got no concerns, but if you've got gut feeling, it's usually right, and follow it. Next slide. So services that we use locally in the Northamptonshire, if you just want to literally keep clicking, they'll all come up. I was trying to be fancy. So Engage, which is a local service for alcohol and substance misuse. They have done some amazing work, and they do some really good training as well to staff members. So I really do get in touch with them. They're brilliant. Obviously the police is our #1 normal person if we've got any concern. To keep going, serve, so that's our criminal, that's to reduce violence in the local area, and they will come and speak to people in the hospitals if we've got concerns. They will have one-to-one meetings. They'll go out. They're never in uniform, because we know that children, if they see police in uniform, they get the fingers up to them normally. They will not have any contact with them. If you want to keep going. So Northamptonshire, so that's our local safeguarding hub, RISE, so that's a reducing the incidence of sexual exploitation, who do their own training, and CAMS, which is the mental health service for us. So just wanted to share this. So this is quite a recent online safety bill. It's the new internet safety laws that they're going to make them go further. There've already been laws out there, but it's more about shielding children and protecting them, not only of free speech online, but technology in general. If Obi is happy to share that afterwards, that would be great. Useful contacts, that's for our local area, because I've put this slide together to ensure that I can use it in the future. And please just remember, safeguarding is everybody's business. We all have a duty to report concerns and a duty of candour. Any questions? I'm so sorry that it's gone over. Joe stole the spotlight a little bit.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Lizzie.
I tried to go as fast as possible. I'm sorry.
Okay. I mean, the one important thing I've been able to pick out is, even when Joe spoke, and you at some point yourself, is that there's a lot of emotions when you're talking about, and that kind of expresses how very serious that, you know, this thing is to you guys, and obviously the public should know. And most of the stuff said here obviously expresses what your department does, and it's important that other members of the public here are aware that they've got that support from you guys. And absolutely, like you've clearly said, that you don't have at the back of your mind, there isn't any need to think that you would feel blamed or the victim would feel blamed. And also it's important that we, you know, members of the public know that them as parents, look out for signs in children, which you have clearly stated here: changes in behavior, changes in addressing, and invariably acts as if they're trying to impress someone else.
Yeah.
Avoiding schools or having so much money, coming home with some gifts, and it should have, even though it says professional curiosity, parents should also have that same level of curiosity.
Absolutely.
And should raise concern.
And the one thing my bugbear is, please, if people just keep saying to me, it's only cannabis. Well, actually, if you're buying cannabis or you're having cannabis, that means you're involved with drug dealers. And then there is your risk automatically. So as professionals, please don't ever say it's just cannabis. We've had lots of arguments about this with people. When children smell of cannabis, that's a safeguarding straight away.
Oh.
I think there's someone's hand up.
Okay, let's find out what that is. We've got Dr. Patrick Briggs. Patrick, you've got the floor.
Right, thank you, Obi, thank you. Lizzie, first of all, I want to say a big thank you for your presentation. It was very touching and moving.
Thank you.
Right, I'm aware that quite a few of us here are health professionals. I'm also aware that we have some that are not health professionals. So most of what you've talked about, I think we can relate to them, and we as health professionals can know what to do. But I'm just wondering, is there any advice that you will give to non-health professionals how to look out for things like this? I mean, I'm talking about not just the parents, but all the, other people in the community. How do they go about it? Even if they notice, what would they do? What should they do?
So they need to, if they've got concerns, they need to go to their local police is usually the first place, because within every police force, there is now CSE and CE gangs, like teams that work together, and they're usually the best people to support. Your 0 to 19 services do all of the education within schools. Your GP should have vasts of information. They usually have what local services are available for parents, and they can do them referrals, or if they need to come to us for CP medicals, etc., they can refer into us, and we do engage through strat meetings. So they're the kind of things that they need to be doing. But I would say absolutely your police, your local police, is your number one way you should be going. I'm not saying ring 999, please don't, because they would tell me off. What I'm saying is go into them, ask what services are available, ask for them referrals. But your 0 to 19 service, so the school nurses especially, and your sexual health clinics, know all of this information. They are the ones that hold on to this information, and they have quite a good contact and relationship with these services. But it's everywhere now. The training is out to everybody, so everybody in your area should always have the same kind of information. So for instance, if you're in London, everybody within that North London, for example, would have that, what's local to them, and they would be able to support, and they should be doing the same training.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thought I saw some hands up, but I guess we're taking it down. I just wanted to use the opportunity to share a document. I think I've already put it up for people to see, but I just wanted to use the opportunity to share a document from Serenity, which is the sexual abuse referral center, who have also quite happy for us to share this document so that people are aware. And one of the very important information that they wanted me to pass on is that if you're a victim of sexual abuse, you can now self-refer. So they understand that most people would want to preserve their privacy and would not want to talk about it, and would not want to present to hospital or see a healthcare professional, but you can self-refer to them, and they can provide support for you, as well as work with the police to prosecute whoever has been the perpetrator. Secondly, even members of the public can refer anonymously, so which is a very important thing, which they wanted people to know, that you can actually refer anonymously. And there are several services they can provide, which include forensic medical examination, emergency contraception, pregnancy testing, and referral to other services. So I thought it was very nice to do that. I have uploaded the document on the chat, so I think people will be able to download that at their own time. That would then take us to the next speaker. And thank you very much, Liz, for a lovely presentation. I would be bringing in the next speaker in a bit.
I'm going to have to go now, but thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. So our next speaker is Dr. Abdul Adeni Oredola. He's an associate specialist in older adult psychiatry. He has 16 years of experience working in psychiatry. It's currently a tutor for staff and associate specialist in Berkshire Healthcare Foundation Trust. He has a wide range of experience within all age groups, covering drug and alcohol, forensic psychiatry, eating disorders, child and adolescent psychiatry, among others. At the moment, he is working in inpatients, older adults with both functional and organic mental health conditions, as well as treatment of adults and older adults with severe mental illnesses using ECT, which is electroconvulsive therapy. He has a special interest in equality and diversity, as well as doctors' employment rights and advocacy, sitting on both local and negotiating committee and regional SAS committee. Dr. Adeni Oredola, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. If you permit me to, if you stop sharing, then I can start my presentation. Just give me a moment. Can you see my screen?
No.
Just bear with me one moment. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you for having me. This is not meant to be an academic discussion. It's an awareness and intervention discussion. And thank you for trying to highlight this concern that we've been talking about this evening. Like you said, my name is Abdul Adeni Oredola. So before we can even talk about gender-based violence, we need to understand what is domestic abuse. And some of my colleagues have highlighted some of those definitions. But for the purpose of this discussion, we need to understand that domestic abuse is any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive or threatening behavior, violence or abuse between those aged 16 and over, and or have been intimate partners or family members, regardless of gender and sexuality. And abuse can be of different forms. We all familiar with physical and sexual forms of abuse, but it can also be psychological and emotional, and also financial. When we talk about psychological and emotional abuse, this will include things like making people feel guilty for behaviors in a relationship, telling them they are the reason why they are being assaulted. All this kind of psychological abuse can fall under that category. The WHO estimates that about 1 in 3 women worldwide has been subjected to either physical or sexual abuse by an intimate partner, and in their lifetime. And this is a third of the female population. And most of this violence is usually perpetrated by an intimate partner. And according to estimates, women between the ages of 15 and 49, about 27% of these women have been subjected to one form of physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner. And this gives us an idea of the scope of the problem. But when it comes to the influence of substance abuse in domestic abuse or violence against women, when we talk about substances, we tend to think about things like heroin, injectable heroin, or smoking meth or cannabis. But alcohol is one of the leading substances that has been identified as linked to domestic abuse. And researchers found that women who have experienced gender violence 5.5 times more likely to be diagnosed with a substance misuse problem over their lifetime. And a report in 2005 found that 2/3 of the women surveyed for domestic violence have reported use of substance have been problematic following their experience with domestic violence. The same report noted that substance use during domestic violence was usually used by these women to either dull the pain of the physical violence or the emotional pain. A Crime in England survey between 2010 and 2011 showed that it included the focus on partners who have experienced abuse, and 21% of those in that last year were under the influence of alcohol, while 8% thought that the perpetrators was under the influence of some other illicit substance. Yeah, it's again just emphasizing that point. Most perpetrators interviewed believe that the substance abuse was used as the substance was an excuse rather than a cause for the violence. So most women with experience of domestic violence reported that there's been issues of abuse by the partner even when they are sober. So it's not necessarily the only link. It just means that that person has had a problem with substance abuse, not that they are intoxicated at the time. The problem precedes even the incidents of abuse. And this is just trying to highlight some of those problems. Again, a toxic cycle of domestic abuse. I'm not going to talk so much on that because it's been severely dealt with by previous speakers. And this will include things like sex exploitation, and the county line problems. So we've talked about the scope of the problem, but how do we deal with this problem? Because if we don't have a good way of highlighting where to get help, then the problem will just continue to persist. The GP is always a good place to start, especially around this part of the world. They may offer treatments at the practice or refer to local drug services. And occasionally you might find someone who is not comfortable talking to the GP. They can approach the local drug treatment services directly. And usually they do support with self-referral, not necessarily through a health professional. One can self-refer to these services. And the Frank website is usually another good starting point. There are charities and private drug treatment centers that also help. And this is just to try and support the work the NHS service is doing. And you can, if you visit the AdFarm website, you find some useful signposts to where to get support. So what does drug treatment involve? Usually it will depend on the individual's personal circumstance and what they're addicted to. They usually would be allocated a key worker who will work with them through their recovery. And the treatment plan may include a number of strategies, not necessarily just one way of dealing with the problem. And it could also include talking therapy such as CBT. Treatment with medicine, especially those people who are dependent on heroin, opioids.
What's happening?
They might be
Yeah,
offered.
I can say.
Thank you. They may be offered substitute medication like methadone. And sometimes you have people who are severely compromised because of the level of dependence, and they need a detoxification. And this can be done, usually it's done in inpatient setting. And what detoxification does is to try and help cope with the withdrawal symptoms while the offending substance is removed from the system. And of course, there are some self-help groups, such as Narcotics Anonymous, Alcohol Anonymous, and the likes. So where does this treatment take place? It could happen at home or in a hospital inpatient setting. And if a drug-related problem is severe and complicated, there are residential rehab services. But before we start intervention, one needs to be able to recognize what is constituting domestic abuse. And these are some questions, probing questions you could ask either yourself or somebody you know who might be suffering domestic abuse. And things like, do they feel like they are cut off from family and friends intentionally, just to isolate them and control them? Do they feel bullied, threatened, or controlled? Do they feel that somebody is taking control of their finances? And are they being monitored with the use of technology? Like, I mean, it's so easy. There's a fine line between what is just safety precautions, family stake, to like most people use the iPhone tracking app, but if the individual feels like it's being used in such a way that is just to track their movement, and they get harassed about where they've been, where they've not been, that is beginning to constitute some sort of domestic abuse. And of course, physical and sexual abuse, those usually are pretty much obvious. So this is just some helpline that can be accessed by members of public. I know there have been some questions earlier in the day about where do people get help. These are free helplines that are non-judgmental, call them, they give you help and advice, and they can signpost to services in your locality that might be relevant to whatever the individual is going through. And there's also one for men as well, because let's not forget that although majority of sufferers of domestic abuse and violence are women, some men also suffer gender-based violence. Of course, there's a victim support, which you can reach on a free phone as well. This is a code word that's been devised to try and help people who are in urgent need. If you walk into a pharmacy or a place of safety where you see I'll show you the logo, usually looks like something like this, and just asks for Annie, and they'll be able to provide immediate action. What Annie means is action needed immediately. And once that code word is said, either in a pharmacy, in a shop, in a GP, it means that person needs help right there and then. And the staff are trained to take immediate action to protect the individual. And this can be what we call safe spaces. It could be Boots, Morrison, Superdrug, bank, some independent pharmacists across the UK. So sometimes individuals get into a new relationship, they start picking up that their partner might be abusive. There is a new law that allows partners to check the history of if their new partner has a history of abuse, and if they just quote clear law, the police is obligated to support them in getting that disclosure. And if you're concerned about a friend or a family member, you can apply for that disclosure on their behalf. And if you feel that this person is at immediate risk, of course, please notify the police. One can get a court order to protect from either the individual or their children from domestic abuse. And it's called a non-molestation or occupation order. So if you're worried that a friend, loved one suffering domestic abuse, there's a national domestic abuse helpline. Again, it's a free phone number, operates 24 hours a day, and it's confidential advice. So what you need to understand is that you're not alone. A lot of people face similar challenges. You know somebody, they're facing domestic abuse, you don't know what to do. You can't very well get involved directly. There's a helpline to contact and they'll give you confidential advice, and it's free. Because, like I said, it can be challenging asking for help for someone but of course, if there's immediate risk of harm to an individual, 999 is still the point of contact. And if you're an employer, you think your staff might be facing domestic abuse, you need to try and create an atmosphere for them to be able to disclose to you. But sometimes, again, this can be challenging. And there's you can either contact the same helpline or 999 if you think the individual is at immediate risk. So the domestic abuse line is free, and there's resource for employers too. This is a number. It's called, there's an organization, healthcare.org is dedicated support line for employers. Yeah, so thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Redola. That was quite succinct and straight to the point. That was quite helpful. If there are any questions, we'll be happy to take them. I've got a hand by PP.
Yes, thank you so much for this enlightening session. Please, I have a question. During the course of your presentation, you were able to give residents of the UK places, at least you call a few places where they could go, tough rash of domestic violence. Now we have a mixed participation. There are participants in this session who are from Africa. Like I can see some people from Nigeria. So I think it's important that they are also informed about places they could go to if in case of domestic violence. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very, very valid observation. And I apologize for focusing my talk to UK residents especially. But I'm happy to take suggestions from people who live in different parts of the world about where to contact. But most importantly, the first thing to do is to be able to recognize abuse. And once you recognize abuse, try and recognize if there's an imminent threat to an individual. If there's an imminent threat, there's no argument about who to contact. It is the police all over the world. You need to go to the police first off. When it comes to managing the subtle aspects of domestic abuse or the predisposing factors like drug consumption, then that will depend on what is locally available in your area.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions? It's important. I just thought I'd use this opportunity to highlight the reason why we are doing this program, especially as it relates to the locality where we are all resident or where the partner Kettering General Hospital is. Kettering, most people might think is quite a calm place, but in 2021, a young lady, Madi Dordant Hulambi, was stabbed in the neck by her boyfriend. And in October 2021, another young lady, Marta Shimlenka, was also stabbed in the neck. A few months after, another lady was spiked with an injection at a party. And all these things are just the things that kind of buttress the reason why we keep creating awareness on violence against women and girls. Because as Dr. Redola has said, these use of drugs could be an avenue for which they get these people under their control and they can't pull away. And I think one of the participants here, Femi, had mentioned about the unwillingness of the victim to give in to intervention. And this is why we're having this discussion, in order to sensitize people The reason why we have a 16-day activism is because over the years, since 1991 when it was launched, it has just been more or less sensitizing the government to create laws and all that. Last year or 2 years ago, it was more or less a synergy with the healthcare professionals and multilateral organizations. This year, we're trying to make it everybody's problem. Everyone, as Joe has said, safeguarding is your responsibility. As Lisa said, every parent should be curious and look out for signs of abuse in their wards and be able to escalate it as appropriate. That being said, if there are no further questions, I think I saw the national president of the international president of the National Association of Sea Dogs at some point, but I think he may have left for another meeting. I think I would leave the closing remarks to the chapter president of National Association of Sea Dogs, Magna Carta Deck, to be able to close the event, and maybe probably tell us more about Walk 347 and any program that the association has for the weekend coming up. And that will be Dr. Patrick Briggs.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Obi, for arranging this. First of all, I would like to thank all the participants for making time to come and listen to this very important topic. I hope most of us have gained or have picked on one or two things that we can use in this fight against violence against children and women. So going forward, I want to thank the management of Kettering General Hospital for collaborating with us to do this. I think this is the second time we are collaborating with them. Hopefully, I think this should be a yearly thing. We'll be very, very glad if we can have this session every year. Even if it's more than once a year, that'll be great as well. So I thank them. I thank the medical director for taking out precious time to come and pay us, show her face here. And yeah, so yes, Obi, I want to thank you as well, because I think you did most of the legwork at the background, and you brought everyone together under the auspices of Magna Carta Deck and Walk 347. Magna Carta Deck is one of the branches of the National Association of Sea Dogs, which was founded about 70 years ago. So we're actually doing our 70th year anniversary celebration. So there are so many things we're doing now. And Magna Carta Deck is also participating in these activities. And to this end, we are going to have, we're visiting a food bank next weekend in Boreham Wood, where we will be volunteering our services and also giving our donations to them. So it will be good if any of you here are free on that day. It's on the 11th of December. We can share out the details for you if you want to join us. That'll be great. So hopefully we'll continue to see things like this, and we'll continue to have different sessions, because as you know, National Association of Sea Dogs is an organization that was formed basically to fight societal ills wherever we see ourselves, to help the vulnerable in the public, social advocacy. So this is all part of it. And hopefully, with collaborations like this, we will be able to make an impact in the society. So once again, I want to thank everybody for showing up, and we will see again in the near future, hopefully sooner than in a year's time, because I really did enjoy it. Obi, I'd want you to please ask the speakers, because some of the YouTube clips that you shared, I don't know if it's possible for us to share it, because I would like to have it in my inbox as well. I'm sure some of you would also like to have it in your inbox and have a look at it. So please give our regards to your CMD and everybody, all the people, Liz and Joanne. They did a fantastic job. Okay, so thank you everyone, and have a lovely weekend. Let's continue looking out for violence against women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patrick Briggs. Okay. That was wonderful. Thank you. I would like to also recognize Mr. Ochuko Achora, who is a chapter president of the South London chapter of the National Association of Sea Dogs. Thank him for joining us today. And as the president or Captain of the Magna Carta Deck has said, there is a weekend of humanity, which is done across more than 5 continents and over 40 communities, where you have chapters of the National Association of Sea Dogs. And I think Magna Carta Deck will be participating in that by volunteering in a food bank and providing services for destitutes and people who are not able to obviously take care of their basic needs, especially at this time of economic crisis. While we keep up the flame on and lit, let us all continue to play our parts in fighting violence against women and girls. Do your part, play your part. Thank you.